Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Creative Conversations on this lovely evening in Seattle. I'm your host and the Development Director of Early Music Seattle, Betsy Brick. And tonight I am thrilled to be joined by the stage directors of the Madrigal Comedy Lamphy Pernasso, Arne Zaslove, and Theo Deacon. And they partnered with Early Music Seattle back in 2011 to bring this delightful romp into the Renaissance to the stage. And we've recently revisited a video of this production and have enhanced it for a virtual audience. And you will get to check this out yourselves on Saturday, April 17th at 7 p.m. And you will be able to view it on this production was, the video production was sponsored in part generously by Frank and Joan Conlon. And as you're watching it, and so I would now like to introduce our guests. So Arne is a Fulbright scholar who developed a specialty in clowning and improvisation through an Sony Clemente. This is me trying out my Italian, folks. He has directed and taught in many regional theaters across the United States and Canada, including the Bathhouse Theater in Seattle, where he served as artistic director for 20 years. Welcome, Arne.
Thank you. I'm glad.
University of Washington School of Music, and served there as a professor of music and drama and as director of the opera department. He has had quite a varied career as a stage director, actor, translator. It is great to have you with us, Theo.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So for those of you joining us live tonight, we will be leaving time for Q&A toward the end of our program. So at the bottom of your screen, I will take a look at that a little bit later and put your questions to our artists. Okay, well, I think without any further ado, let's jump in, gentlemen. So my first question is, for those in our audience who are new to this art form, how would you define a madrigal comedy? My understanding is that it's a precursor to opera.
A few, so I'll explain this all for us.
Wonderful.
The work we are studying is Lamphy Pernasso. It is called a commedia armonica. As you can see, here is the opening page of the original edition, which we all have a copy of. It's studied thoroughly. It is in actuality a madrigal comedy, which was a genre that was popular for a very brief period of time during the late 16th century, from about 1580 to 1600. What it is a series of light, polyphonic, beautiful little musical pieces. But each of these pieces, there are several small madrigals that are put in an alignment that tell the story, and it's almost always a comic story. This was about the same time that they were creating opera. Opera would be produced just shortly after the turn of the century. And there were many different experiments going on. This was one of them because the madrigal was a very, very popular form of music. Lamphy Pernasso was written by Orazio Vecchi, Horatio Vecchius, who was a composer from Modena. He composed a number of ecclesiastical music, but also popular madrigals and dance music. The text, we believe, was written by Giulio Cesare Croce, who was from Bergamo, And he was noted for writing all sorts of funny, slightly vulgar comic bits. He actually got in trouble for writing them. And the style is so similar to the text that we believe he was the author of it. Now, madrigals were often sung in people's homes, in their small parlors, people sitting around a table, as you can see here, with each of them having a part book with their vocal line in it. And they would sing across the table back and forth to each other. And this actually woodcut comes from the booklet on Lampi Parnaso. And this is the type of part book they had. Each of them would have their own vocal line. And it was through these that people would sit and sing. They'd tell stories of love and despair, comedy, tragedy. And what we had to do was take all these different parts, put them together into a modern edition. And this was the modern edition that I was commissioned to do by the Early Music Seattle back in 2011. But somehow we had the idea that we wanted to do it in English rather than in Italian, because the Italian itself is not just standard Italian. It's done in a whole series of dialects from all over. From some of the characters have a dialect from Venice, some of them have it from Bergamo. And at times, even Italians today don't understand all the dialects. So the idea was to do it in an English translation, which I was charged to do. Now the question is, why do it? Well, because we thought it would be a wonderful, wonderful departure from the type of music dramas that we were doing at the Early Music Seattle. And Lampi Parnaso is the most famous of the madrigal comedies. Now the title is itself a joke. It's a portmanteau of the word, the classical prefix, amphi, which we know from words like amphibious and amphitheater, which means both sides or around. And the word, the Italian name Parnaso, which is the Italian word for Parnassus, that great mountain in classical Greece, where it was said that the 9 muses would be taught by Apollo how to bring art, music, and poetry to everyone. So I've been to Parnassus. I've actually splashed water from the sacred stream on my head. So this is where you get your inspiration. It is the literal fountainhead. The problem is, of course, this is a vulgar comedy, a fun vulgar comedy. So it's not about being on top of Parnassus, it's being Lampi Parnaso, surrounding Parnassus at the base, the less than fashionable part, where regular people like you and me go and have some fun.
I see.
And so, and who are these characters? Well, this was written in Italy during the late Renaissance, early Baroque, and one of the dominant forms of comedy at that time was commedia dell'arte, the art of comedy. And when we started hawking this idea around of the leaders of the Early Music Seattle and myself to a number of theater groups, one name always came up. You can't do this work unless you have a real master of comedy, a man who knows the ins and outs of commedia dell'arte. And of course, the name that was on everyone's lips at the time was Arne Zaslove. And you didn't have to bend my arm any, because I have been watching Arne's production for decades, from my youth at the University of Washington and all those years at the Bathhouse. And the idea of having the chance to work with Arne was wonderful, and I looked at it. So Arne and I met at the Moore Theater, where we were going to perform it, and we immediately found a bond. And through the process of putting this work together, and we put it together in a very, very short period of time.
3 weeks, I believe, is what I think I understand.
Yeah, it took us 4 months to create the edition and the translation, and then Arne took 3 weeks to stage it. But of course, Arne, you are perfectly the perfect person for it, because you are the master of.
Is it my turn now to talk?
Yeah, let's switch back for a moment.
Okay.
I would like to ask a question, then this will lead into you sharing with us a little bit, Arne. So you shared with me that none of this work was written down. Would you talk more about the process of recreating this humorous and at times naughty comedy? What challenges did it present? And Arne, why don't you speak about some of your artistic challenges and how you solved them?
This particular production? Well, that's a good question. I had, when Theodore approached me and when Gus approached me to do it, I was flattered and honored. And of course, I had had about 40 years of experience working with the two best Commedia dell'arte professors, my Carlo Mazzoni Clementi, who was I met him when I was 19 years old, and I saw him do 6 of the best mask performances I've ever seen. It was called 6 Characters in Search of Commedia. I was 19, and I was said, that's what I want to do with my life. And I stayed with him as a protege for 4 years, and then for maybe 6 years after that. And I was able to go to Paris and study with Jacques Lecoq, who was a colleague and a contemporary of Carlo Mazzoni. So when they came to me, I said, wow, I would love to do that. And it's right in my backyard. And I know the Moor. I had produced a Shakespeare every year there. And when Theodore told me, he says, but they will be singers, madrigal singers, who are going to be doing the text. I said, well, what are the actors are going to be doing? Well, they, in the history of that period, which I did not know, that it was acted out as a dumb show while the madrigal singers were singing the Italian that you saw Theodore show you, and then you saw his translation, which is excellent, by the way. We shared the time on that to make sure that the rhymes were reminiscent of the Italian, but they also, in the Italian, the characters sing in the nature of the character they're playing. And in French, I've done Moliere. Moliere wrote for the characters that he wrote. When you get a regular translation of any other play, it's bull, because they just write it like a Brit would write it. And so when you find a good Moliere, I've translated many Molieres, he wrote in the style. And so Theodore knew that, and when he did his version, he did the translation as the characters would speak it. Now, those photos that we saw of the 6 characters around, it's very important that the hierarchy of the class structure of that period is got to be evident. And all the early theaters, Shakespeare, Moliere, Volpone, all those the characters were class structures. We don't have that anymore. We don't have that anymore. You have it in some television shows, the Scrubs and The Office. You have the hierarchy, but people don't write contemporary plays. A little bit, but Shakespeare, of course, that's classical theater. So when I was offered the possibility, I said, well, if their madrigal singers are going to sing it, what do we do with them? I don't want them standing on the side of the stage, because we looked at a couple of other productions of it, and that's boring. I mean, that's a soundtrack. So I said, well, we have to figure out a way to integrate the singers, and you'll see how that's worked out when we cut to the opening of the show. There's also something I have to mention is that there's improvisation. Nothing was written down about the Commedia dell'arte. No text. Only I have books and books in my library behind me here. The scripts are just descriptions of what they did, and not what they said. So you said this. Well, what do? You have to do what they did, and then you have to. And then eventually, playwrights began to write the scripts. And because I was somewhat ignorant of that transition from early, you saw the dates of those authors. That's 1500. That's a long time ago, man. Yes. So what happened is that we were promised that they would learn their music, and I said, well, I'll figure out something to do with them when they're singing their songs. Well, turned out we didn't have a lot of time, and Stubbs didn't have a lot of time to teach the music to the singers either. So they kept learning the music, and then we got to start the staging. They had to carry the book. So I said, what the heck am I going to do? I don't want a chorus standing on the side or down in the orchestra pit singing. They have to be visually part of the of the show. And that's one of my, if a plate glass window was in front of the stage, you should know what's going on.
Yeah.
Without, so that's always been my mantra. So
speaking of visuals, I believe, Theo, you have some slides that really show just how this was visually presented, the characters, and how the costuming really played a very important role in
yes,
this.
in our show. And this is a later costume style, which was done by Maurice Sand, who is the son of George Sand, the famous novelist. But this is fairly late. I think this is 18th century. And these are the characters. Isabella is the lover, a Spanish character who's sort of like Cyrano, or he's a braggart and he's a bluffer. Arlecchino in the middle is the servant, the comic servant. His posture is a little bit too erect, but all those diamonds on him are representative of patches, because he was poor. And eventually his costume went from patches to diamonds. Pantalone, that's a good posture for Pantalone. Dottore, he's the doctor. His hat is in his hand here. And I have masks of these characters. Is it the time to show the mask?
Sure, why not?
Well,
Absolutely.
Pantalone, these are the masks that I had made. This is Pantalone. This was made for me for a show that I did for the Seattle Opera. He's the Pantalone, the old lecherous rich man. Whoops, the rich man. Where's my hat? Where's my hat? Hey, Arlecchino, where's my hat? God damn it. Oh, I dropped my hat. My hair's in it too. Look out, look out. This is the one. Oh, I gotta put my hair on.
Gotta get your camera ready.
What? In the show also, which one do I want here? This one is very much like the one we had. This is Arlecchino. He's a comic servant. Notice that he has no peripheral vision. His eyes are straight ahead. He's innocent. Oh, look. What? Where's Pantalone? There, he's a funny old man. I don't like him. What? Where's my lovely Smeraldina, the servant? Oh. And so this is very much like the one we used in the show, that you'll see it later. This is based on a very antique design that was later done by Amleto Sartori, who was the mask maker for Strehler and Lecoq and Carlo. Then you knew them. So he's the servant. And then we have two more if you want to be, we have time for it. Dottore.
Maybe one more.
One more, it's a Dottore. Oh, les mesdames et messieurs, je parle au sujet de le médecin parce que j'ai une bouche avec la bouche. Tu manges les choses avec la bouche. Mais pourquoi? Parce que la bouche est ronde. Elle est ronde et les sons, c'est ronde. Oh, c'est la poésie. Et c'est ça. Alors, that's what he's he's the essence of the pedant. And there's one more that I have here, Capitano. Here's Capitano. I don't have time to get the hats on, but
yes, brief appearance. Oh.
what? I'm scared. No, I'm not scared. I'm brave. You tell me I'm lying? No. That's all I have to do with that. So there's more of them. I have other ones here, but those are the ones we used.
Great.
In the show. That was Capitano, Dottore, Arlecchino, and those are the thrry.
Yeah, let's switch back to seeing some actual. We have some clips, I believe, of some actual production.
We'll show how they came across.
Let's show the progression. Yeah.
So what Arne and I did is that we sat down with the script, with the original music, and we went through it word by word. We went through all the dialects. I read it to him in Italian, did direct immediate translations, exact translations, and then he and I went over the scenarios. And the scenarios are important because they're sort of traditional scenes that get repeated over and over again, and we find them throughout L'Ampipranasso. The most noted of them is, of course, the old man, Pantalone, he with the big pants, always is fallen in love with a young lady who is much younger, who, of course, doesn't want anything to do with him. This is a classic painting, Pantalone's Serenade, which is now in the Drottningholm Theater Museum just outside of Stockholm, one of the great museums, one of the great fully preserved theaters of the time. Arne, do you want to say anything about the drawing?
Well, the drawing is fantastic because I have that same drawing, that same painting in my blog. I have a blog called Commedia dell'Arne, and you can look me up. But this is a classic composition. Look how the line just goes right up to the beautiful woman in the window. And he's a fool to courting her. Look, if you could see closely, I'm pointing to the face underneath the cloak that he's riding on the back of one of his servants. He's abusing one of his servants. You can see the poor little guy's face. That's Arlecchino. That's Arlecchino there. He's been made to wear donkey ears and a mask because he's an ass archetypes, but he has a mask, he has a hat, and he's obviously prompting Pantalone as to what to say, because Pantalone is not a creative guy, but he's got the money, so he wants to court the girl, and he is always horny for a beautiful young lady. And usually it's his daughter that's trying to get married to a young man, and he won't let her get married. So that's often the plot. The plots were just simple, and they were improvised all the time, all through that period, until the playwrights began to write. Goldoni and Gozzi and Moliere, and they began. Moliere has pure commedia scenes in his plays.
Right.
Yeah, and these scenes reappear in Lampi Parnaso, although they're put together to create a story arc. So the story of Pantalone serenading, in the case of Lampi Parnaso, a lady of ailing repute, the local prostitute, is preserved there. And indeed, when we look at the woodcuts, and there are woodcuts with the original text that are wonderful. So this is an original wood text from the text of La Pantalone. There is the serenader, there is the lady in the window, and there is the comic servant on the far left side. And you can see also the simplicity of the set. The sets were almost always outside, correct, Arne?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was always outside. There was very, in the commedia, there was nothing indoors. Some of the early operas, there's something indoors, but you see the forced perspective up the street. Well, that's a forced perspective. And so they're always on the street because they're performing on the street. These actors were performing on the street, perform in the outdoors. And so that's why and then they traveled, there were traveling itinerant performers who went up to France, and then that's how Moliere was influenced by the Commedia dell'Arte. He saw these players coming to France, and he wrote plays for them, and he was a great playwright, of course. And sometimes he wrote in rhyme, sometimes not, but he was very much France. The French got tired of hearing those plays played in Italian, and they wanted them in French. Typically the French, oh, il faut parler français avec mes amis, n'est-ce pas? And they really wanted the language. So Moliere wrote in French, of course.
Oh, what's interesting about
recently that he was fed up with Italian.
What's interesting about the Lampi Parnaso is that this is around 1594 when it was first performed, and which is very, very early. So these are one of the early written down Commedia dell'Arte scenes. I worked out the harmonies and the comedies, the rhymes and everything. And then we built a production that reflected all this wonderful tradition. And here is that scene from
Theodore was so good at translating. My Italian was pretty good because I lived so long with Carlo. nature of the characters. So Theodore was able to make the translation sound like the character that spoke the word.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it was
So
really
I remember those,
really a labor of love that came out beautifully.
and now you can see it here. This is how, from all those woodcuts and those stories, we now, Arne and I, reproduce them on the stage. So you see Hortensia, who comes from there's a lot of bad puns in this. She is the garden in which people always want to plant things.
Oh, shame on you! Shame on you!
Well, that joke is in the piece.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
They talk about that all the time.
I'm just teasing, of course.
She is the garden of earthly delights. I think it's the same hat, isn't it?
looked
That's
like
a hat.
it.
That's a hat from the show. I kept the hat.
There we go.
Pepper made the hair come out of that. He dressed the hair and the beard. Yeah.
And then we have on the far left, we have our Arlecchino with the patches on his costume, with the Arlecchino hat and mask.
I had trouble finding that hat. I had to go to a Goodwill and find an old hat and bend it to fit his Arlecchino hat.
So the idea was to fit this all together. And then he also wants to serenade the young, beautiful daughter of Pantalone. He's not going to get her, of course. The two young lovers will be joined at the end. But you're going to see again how we set it up to look very, very much like those woodcuts, how the original scenarios of the Commedia dell'arte did. And this is the fine thing about the Madrigal comedies. You see the group there on the right.
Let me just interject that if you can see the chorus on the side over here with the stage left on your right, is the only poor one and the courtesan who was in the window earlier. But these people are the ones that are singing, and I had to move them around all the time because I didn't want them to be static. So I integrated them into the show. So here they are looking over the fence because they got. Then, or the next cut, you'll see that they had to configure a mountain because the lover of Pantalone's daughter is refused to marriage, and so the guy is so heartbroken he decides to commit suicide, and that we have that scene to show you.
So what we've done here, what is so wonderful here that Arne did is that he created a class. And they do all the voices of the character. So Arne created this wonderful opening of the prologue. There's a prologue where they introduce, my lords and ladies, though you expect this evening more fits of fretful moaning and
there's the text right there. See it?
Mm-hmm.
There it is on the Italian. The Italian, we can see a little bit of the dialect. And so Arne said, okay, let's show how this is integrated together. As if they were just going to perform the group, the scenarios by speaking. And then when they realize their mistake, we move into the Madrigal comedy itself.
So they came out, here it is, here's the show. I don't mean to interrupt, but we have 3 false starts at the beginning of the show because they're making mistakes. And you'll see what we call a lazzi, an improvised experience with the whole ensemble. Literally, Carlo Mazzoni told me that it's a knot in the rope. And that's what a lazzi is. It's an improvised, all in the silent films, Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Laurel and Hardy, all physical business. And you'll see that coming up now.
So this is how we did it. We started with the Italian. Arne and I worked out the scenarios. I did the translation. So there was a singing translation, which is difficult because it had to be close enough to the original Italian, get all the jokes of the original Italian, which was not easy, and still be sung in the rhythm of the music that was written in Italian.
Theodore, if you hold that slide, you just look at this, spettatori illustri tragica aspetti, o comica apparati, I vari guys ornati. And then look what Theodore did. He put lamenting, presenting, ending, ending. He had in couplets, triplets, whatever, that would echo the Italian rhyming. And of course, Carlo would always say, Italiano, c'est le bel canto.
Si, si.
The beautiful music of the Italian sound.
Sempre bel
I grew
canto.
up with that, hearing it all the time. That's great.
So here it is now, the false ending, the false beginning, the Lazzi, and how Arne moved it into a madrigal comedy.
Or fits of fretful mourning and lamenting, or tragedies presenting a solemn moral ending.
We come to court your laughter.
Pray, do not judge our jesting with abusive protesting.
And if our costumes should look a bit dismayed,
at least our act is full of antic playing.
This is the town where our affair will happen, and this is the great wide theater of life where all of us love.
We'll do our best to shock you and to confuse you with our music, mirth, and mocking to amuse you. And with our masquerading, we shall now entertain you by serenading I servitori di due padroni. Scusa, no, guarda. È cambiato, guarda cos'è. Questo è proviamo a suonare questo, secondo me no, voi non lo facciamo, ok? L'Anfi Parnasso, Vabbè, vediamo, io non lo so.
Now, we have a clip from the middle of it. This is the original wood Pollock illustration. At one point, there's always a pair of tragic lovers. In this case, they are Lucio and Isabella. Isabella's father, Pantalone, wants to marry her off to the rich doctor. And Lucio thinks it's all going to go to pot. So he goes to a high mountain or a high tower to throw himself off. As you can see in this scenario, And in the translation, farewell, my faded flower, from death I shall not cower. To that high tower I go this hour. Oh no, oh cruel woman, whose heart is well past caring, that your true love fell to his end, despairing. Now, Arne had a brilliant idea at this point.
Foolish, the lovers. They're not intelligent. They're not smart. There's a few other characters that can be more smarter than that. They are in love with being in love. And so they're very, very melodramatic. So they're about to commit suicide. They never do commit suicide. These are comedies. They're not tragedies. So I cast the young man who's the lover boy, who's a very good friend of mine, and I just had a beer with him in this beautiful sunshine yesterday. He's a puppeteer. He's the Carter family marionette, the Carter Puppet Center. And so he had never done a full play. And I said, Dimitri, I really would love to have you be in the play because and I have a very tall leading lady, and you are a very tall, handsome man. So and she when I cast her, she said, "You better get a tall guy who's my lover." I said, "I will do that for you for sure." So that's what happened. And so I had a puppeteer, and he's the character. That was a wonderful scene, and it was a showstopper. Everybody who saw that loved it. I didn't have to do anything to stage it. All I did was say, "Okay, you chorus, you guys are going to form a mountain. Okay, Dimitri, climb the mountain with the puppet." And I would tell Arlecchino, I said, "You got to come in and rescue the lover." And they did it. We did it once, and it worked because they were wonderful actors. They all knew how to do physical theater. And if you heard the music, it's a lament. That music is so beautiful. It's a lamentation. And that's what the 5 people are singing what the lover is going through. That's not in the opera. The music is, but the staging. To stage it, and everybody who saw the show or the video, they just said, "Oh God, that's great." Well, it's mother is the necessity of invention, right? Right.
What I liked a lot is that, of course, is that there was always a bit of improvising. And here, the puppeteer Dimitri had the puppet stop and stand in the middle of the singer's music, which I thought was a brilliant, brilliant moment.
Yeah.
So the lovers are finally reunited at the end. There's always a happy ending. There's always a marriage at the ending. So everyone brings, there is the epilogue where everyone brings prizes to the two lovers. One of them is a dog. And finally, most epilogues, they finally sort of drop the pretense of the story. They line across the stage. You can see in the woodcut there, all the performers lining across the stage and saying, so our show has ended, and you good people, if we have not offended by teasing and deriding or naughty poking at our lovers' chiding, then our play must have pleased you. So applaud now, clap with gusto your hands, shout out your bravos. In other words, throw money, please.
Well, that was a tradition that went right into the 19th century at the end of the Restoration comedies that were great plays or great playwrights for the Restoration. It always ended with an epilogue asking the audience for applause. And it started way, way, way 400 years before that.
Yes, and here is how it shows at the end. One of my favorite part here comes where everyone gives a gift. The prostitute gives the dog, which is the sign of faithfulness. The father gives the key to his house, which means that he has now given his daughter away, the key to his life. And Arlecchino, who all he wants to do is either eat, sleep, gives them a gift of radishes.
Show has ended. Good people, if we have not offended.
With our teasing and deriding.
Or naughty poking at our lovers' chiding.
Then our play must have pleased you.
So, maestro, musica!
So now our show has ended. Our show has ended. And you people, if we are not offended by teasing and deriding,
And Arne worked with the troupe for several weeks together, and they all bonded wonderfully well. And we all got together on my deck overlooking the lake, had a clown reunion. They were wonderful days.
Speaking of clowns, I believe I would love it if you would share with our audience more about the relationships that you actually developed with the clowns.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, in order to keep the group going up, the Arlecchino, Paul Delbeni there in the middle in the blue shirt, stayed at our household. And so he and I had long discussions about comedy and about the music. And every Saturday night after rehearsal, the clowns would come over, we'd have pizza, and we would watch Marx Brothers films, one right after another, of which, of course, all of them were shouting improvisatorial lines at the screen that's behind me here. And we became very close. Now, unfortunately, during the production, I actually got quite ill. I had pleurisy, which was, I had a very serious case of pleurisy, but I was running 3 shows at once. So I had to stay at the rehearsal to explain everything. So they created a huge beanbag chair for me to sit in. And of course, I was filled with medicine and I fell asleep during rehearsals a lot. One day I woke up and I found objects, props, all over my body. And it seems that the clowns had spent the entire afternoon putting things on me, like the things on my cat thing that you find on the internet, just to see what would happen when I woke up. I woke up to find all the clowns sitting there, busting their gut, laughing. And I had this hall was filled, covered with props.
Oh
I miss
my
them dearly. It was that's what you call a true troupe, comic troupe that had formed.
Well, that's what happened. It's not very common, but we were blessed with the cast that we found. And I worked with everybody in this cast that you see here, except the fellow in the blue shirt who played Arlecchino. Do we have time for a quick story about that? Arlecchino is the most difficult role to cast, and because he's got to be acrobatic and free and creative and funny. And if you were just talking about watching the Marx Brothers, my wall behind me here is plastered with Marx Brothers pictures and Laurel and Hardy and Buster Keaton. Those are my 3 heroes behind me. But what I could not find anybody in town. I played the role once, but I was too old for it by this time. And I needed somebody desperately to play Arlecchino, but it's a key role. I was looking through something here in my studio and I found a video of some clown. And I said, who's that guy? And I put it on and I looked at it and I said, Jesus, he's really good. He's a versatile, creative comedian. Who is he? I didn't know who he was. So I looked at his website and there was a phone number and I called him up and he was in in California, Northern California. And I said, Theodore, what's his name again?
Paul Delbeni.
Yeah, Paul Delbeni, an Italian last name. And he was fluent in Italian. I said, Paul, are you available to come and do Arlecchino? I said, but how did I find your video? He said, hey, schmuck, I gave it to you in Locarno, Switzerland when I met you. I said, oh my God, you were in the class that Pierre Bilan was training and you were studying with Dimitri. And at the end of every class, he would run away because he had a child and a wife there. And I never got a chance to talk to him. And he went off to do a workshop with Dimitri, a very famous clown who lived a few kilometers away. And I said, Paul, can you come up to Seattle and do Arlecchino? He said, I've been trained for Arlecchino for a couple of years. I said, come on. And that was what it was. And I had totally forgotten. He gave me that. And he was never there. And after class, he was never there at the parties. And I was there 2 weeks in Locarno for a master class. And then he came up, of course, he was fantastic. And I didn't have to do much, really, when you have a class that can improvise. All 4 of those people I'm pointing to you, they're all capable of improvising, and I could just say it once, and that's what the whole style is about. It's always improvised. It's never the same thing, and it's very, very hard to find an actor who is confident enough to be creative and do that. And that's what I've been teaching for over 50 years. And now I'm getting tired of it. No, you cannot find good improvisers who have that spirit that you saw there. Everybody had the spirit. Everybody studied with me there. Chad went to Carnegie Tech where I studied, and Angie is just versatile. She can do anything, sing and dance, and she's wonderful. But when I was in how much time? I don't have much time. When I was in Locarno, Switzerland, there was a master class for 2 weeks, all day long, and there were Italians, Germans, French, Swiss, and Americans, all studying with Pierre Bilan, who was my teacher in Paris. He taught me acrobatics, but we were the same age. I had a reunion with him after 20 years away. He was teaching incredible stuff. Nobody could get it except the Italians. They got it so beautifully. And the Germans, no, they didn't realize it was funny. There's no sense of humor in that culture, not at all. The Swiss were not bad. The Americans couldn't get it either. They didn't get it, understand. And it was a real revelation to me when I went to Switzerland that I've been teaching. And the best students I ever had, the Quebecois, French Canadians, who are European, and I spoke French with them, and I taught them for 3 years, and I put them into a company. And the Icelandic kids, they were great. I taught them for 5 weeks on another Fulbright. But it's a European concept, and Theodore understood that, and I had people who could do it. But it's been an uphill battle all my life to be able to get them. Occasionally, you get a couple like that. I'm talking too much now. Is there a Q&A coming up?
Yes. Okay. I think we will. Oh, you have a friend there, I see. Yes.
I'm going to stop the share here so we can, there we are.
Okay.
We're back to our original screen.
Well, we have now come to the point in our program where we would love to hear from some of you in the audience who have been watching this delightful and entertaining program we've been putting on for you. So if you have a question, just please go ahead and type it into the Q&A box, and I will put it to our artists. Okay, so I do have one here that's shown up. Arne and Theo, what projects do you have coming up when the pandemic abates?
Oh boy.
Oh dear.
That's an awful question.
Let me tell you what happened during the pandemic. I thought I would have a chance to rest. Suddenly, everyone suddenly calls me up, and I've been doing Zoom lectures on theater, opera, musical theater, everywhere. I did over 200 in this last year. I'm not looking for a new project. I'm looking for a bit of a rest.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I wrote a book in the last 10 months, and I'd never written a book before, but I was always told I should write a book about my adventures and my history and stories. It's not a textbook on how to do it, but I did write it. I have a huge collection of hundreds of masks that I've been collecting since I was 20. And I decided to write a book. And my wife is a wonderful editor and a creative writer. She went to Yale. We had her 30th anniversary just on this past weekend. And so I wrote this book, and it's available at Amazon. If you want to buy it, it's called, what do I call it? Insights into Physical Theater and Life.
Oh, wow.
And it's a beautiful book. It turned out beautifully. I had a very good friend do the graphic designs. So that's what I did during the pandemic, and I stopped eating, and I lost some weight. But that doesn't matter. But you just put my name into the Amazon books, and you can see the title. And if you want it, it doesn't cost a lot. I get maybe 50 cents per copy. No, I think I get $4, but that doesn't matter. It's not about money. But everybody's writing it. I have former students reading it. I have former students that are using it to teach others, young people after me. So that's all I did during the pandemic.
Okay. So anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask? We still have a few minutes. So if you have any, please go ahead and type them in the Q&A box. I will ask one while we're waiting here. So what do you hope the audience is going to take away with them after watching this wonderful production you put together?
Well, you heard the applause. They loved it. It was not a long run. I was very happy with the results. In the collaboration with Theodore, it went on and on and on. We've done many things together again. since then, and it was a nice discovery. But when you do a show, it's over with. You crash, you start another one, and you hope not to crash. And I'd seeing it now again. I said, "Oh my God, that's not bad. You know, we could do it. We could do it again."
Theo, would you like to share something?
The one thing I want to point out is that, first of all, comedy is universal. We discovered this, and these stories are told over and over again. But there is a certain excitement when you add music to it. And the delight of this piece is we get ourselves into ruts about theater, about what opera is like, what comedy is like, what musical theater is like. These Madrigal comedies flourished only for about 10 years, and there's only a handful of them by other composers. But even after 400 years, they still touch us, and the music itself still delights us. We still connect with it, and I think I want to know that the music and the comedy are something that everyone can enjoy, and Lampi Parnaso is just one of those pieces that I think appeals to everyone.
Well, it's to add to what Theodore said, it's total theater, and it doesn't exist anymore. I'm so disappointed with contemporary theater. I call it a sofa play or a kitchen table play. You know, you have 4 or 5 people sitting around talking about their problems in life and their drug problems and their sexual problems and their marriage problems. This is not entertainment, but you can still teach with theater. And you can teach with lessons. This evolved into vaudeville and opera, and that's why my wall is covered with Laurel and Hardy, and they are the greatest. Samuel Beckett, if you know who Samuel Beckett is, he idolized Laurel and Hardy. Think of Samuel Beckett's plays, couples who are exactly the same but opposite, and it's classical theater. That's why I wrote the book, and. But it's a shame that movies and television, I stopped training actors when they all didn't want to be doing a classical theater. They wanted to get a TV role. They wanted to be an extra in a movie. That's not theater. That's not art. That's not making good results in society. It can be comedy. It can be tragedy. Think of Shakespeare. Everything. You learn a lesson, you know.
So
don't kill the king. Don't kill the king.
So there is a question that came in. If you had a chance to do the show again, would you? And it sounds like you would. And how would you do it differently?
Well, I don't think we would do it any differently. We have the script now. The problem would be to find people who can perform. This was 10 years ago. If we could find people to do that again now, it would be lucky. I could find them, but in 3 weeks, I would want more time.
Yes,
I would want more time.
Oh, a lot more time. For myself, I would go back and rejigger the translation a bit, because when I wrote it before I had the clowns in front of me. Now, as we were performing it, I got new ideas because I was seeing clowns improvise, and we met in this room here watching comic films, classic films. If I had a chance, I would go back and rework some of the translations to incorporate the comedy. But of course, that's the problem with the joy of Commedia dell'arte is that they could improvise and they could change it. The thing with the Madrigal Comedy is that you had to deal with the script you had at hand. So after doing it once, I would love to go back and make a few differences, because that's
of course we wouldn't repeat the same thing, but you have the script to start with, and you need they contributed a lot. My actors always wanted to contribute to what I did and what we did, and it's always an ensemble with the people that it's a family. You build a family, and but our theater doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way now. Television and film has totally killed live theater, I think.
Right.
Well, I think now that when the pandemic has ended, I have a great hope that people will want to rush madly back into live theater, because boy, it's one thing that holds us together. Television holds us together in a different way and actually kind of separates us. Live theater pulls us together, especially when we're all crammed into a dark space. And as the prologue tells us, it's the theater of life from where we all want to hear things.
I mean, great musical comedies that came out of Broadway. So for so many years, they're trying to redo The Music Man with that great actor who did the monster with the blades that came out of his knuckles.
Yes.
What's his name?
No.
Oh, with Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. Yeah, Hugh Jackman actually is.
Yes.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman was in rehearsal. It started, but they had to cancel the whole thing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine him doing The Music Man? He would be fantastic.
Yeah.
If you want, there's a film of Oklahoma from London where he performs.
Curly, yeah, you gave it to me. I haven't.
It is.
Oh, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Well,
Yeah,
what a
he's
talent! What a
amazing.
talent he is.
All this Western music, all these operas and comedies and things, they all started here where L'Amphi Parnasso was.
Yeah,
L'Amphi
that's right.
Parnasso was
It's
one of the
all
foundational
connected
pieces.
to the comedies and to the puppetry and to the mask and the circus and the clown. Well, there was one book that I was reading. They say Commedia dell'arte is the Marx Brothers plus the circus.
Mhm.
That's a great description.
It was a preface to a book, one of my books here. And
Yeah.
So if the one thing I want people to cart away from this is that when you look at L'Amphi Parnasso, you're looking at the beginning of so many things that we take for granted today.
that's right. That's right.
Opera, musical comedy, Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and some of the comedies we see on television, everything from 30 Rock to The Office and things like that. L'Amphi Parnasso, with its music, is where all this began. So when you watch this
Absolutely.
production coming up on Saturday, know that you are with us there at the beginning.
Absolutely. And that production, again, is going to be Saturday, April 17th at 7 p.m. It's actually being broadcast on the day that it actually happened 10 years ago when you brought this beautiful gem to the stage. So it's pretty amazing. It's having its anniversary on Saturday.
Can anybody see it who tunes in?
Absolutely. They can see it on our website and also on our YouTube channel. And if you're not able to watch it live when it broadcasts, it will be available for viewing afterwards. So don't worry if you have other plans on this beautiful weekend we're going to have, you will have a chance to see it if you're not able to see it on the day.
As they do on the talent shows.
Yes. Well, I just want to thank Arne and Theo for joining us this evening. This has been a delightful conversation with both of you, and it's really been amazing to hear about everything that went into this production. It was quite a labor of love for both of you, and we are going to so enjoy it. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, and have a good rest of your evening, and until next time, take good care. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.